Well, the CNN did put out a story that's, a bit of too little too late. U.S. intelligence agencies have assessed that Iran can now effectively shut down the Strait of Hormuz at will, a powerful new capability acquired as a direct result of the war. Something we've been talking about for many, many weeks. We have now handed Iran de facto control over the strait, a weapon more powerful than any nuke, one source familiar with the assessment tells CNN. Iran has also learned it can leverage targeted strikes against Gulf energy infrastructure and potentially deploy Houthi forces to close the Bab el-Mandeb Strait as an economic nuclear option if negotiations collapse. A senior U.S. official says Iran cannot access any benefits of the framework agreement unless the strait remains open and Tehran abides by its commitments. The assessments underscore the lasting strategic cost of initiating the conflict without fully accounting for Iran's ability to weaponize the world's most critical energy choke point. Just such a bizarre war. Such a bizarre war. It's something that was obvious to everybody.
Yeah, so Mario, we've been saying exactly this, and you're seeing the intelligence assessments. They're really, look, when I had a clearance, what I learned is the dirty secret is 90% of the good stuff is unclassified and out in the open. That's the dirty secret. That's what's actually secret. The other stuff is eavesdropping. Okay. So, but the point is, what you're seeing here is, and what should you expect here in the next 6 months? What you should expect, as I said, greater moves for regional arrangements here. So don't be surprised if in the next 6 months, or maybe even starting on Saturday, you hear more regional arrangements. What does it mean to have a regional arrangement, Mario? It means without the U.S. That's what that means. So and that means more bandwagoning here. And maybe that's going to include now Turkey, and maybe you'll get a Turkey, Saudi. You're just going to get regional arrangements, and we're going to have infinite discussions of different regional arrangements. Those are all ways to get these states to have less interest in having America's forces there, because they're seeing that hosting American forces makes you a target. So this is now for Iran, though, just to look out a little bit further here. Iran has got a real window of about 3 to 5 years to achieve this regional primacy before, and this is something that I'm sure you're well aware of, before there are all these bypasses that are going to be built, the Syrian pipelines, all the other pipelines. That's going to take time. I doubt this is going to happen in 6 months. You're hearing a lot of people talk tough, like they're going to do this in 6 months. We'll see. But over the next year or two, I think, or maybe several years, this is what's coming. So what does that mean? That means that if Iran's going to have regional primacy, it needs a sphere of influence from the Mediterranean. That's what's on the other side of Syria. The Mediterranean to the Red Sea to the Gulf, because it needs to wall off any way that those resources can leave the region, you see. And what has just last week, so this was a week ago, what did the senior military leaders talk about? They talked about that new security belt from where? The Mediterranean to the Red Sea to the Gulf. Why does that make sense? It's not just they have ideological allies. See, I think this is thinking old school. We're still in old school world where we really have the upper hand, and these are the weaklings, and the best they can do is do this little nibbling on the side. I just don't think that's the way Iran is approaching this. That's not their talk, and that's not their behavior. It's still far to go. They're moving down a road. They're not there yet, but you can start to see the outlines of what it means to have regional primacy. You want that sphere of influence, and you want the sphere of influence not just in a political sense here or draw a line on a map. You want to build a wall, so if all these pipelines get built, fine. You go build your pipelines. We're controlling the access.
Not only that, the pipelines are easy targets as well. The Houthis or the Iranians could easily strike the pipeline in Saudi.
But even better, if you can do it, is with drones and the ships. See, what you want to do is start to extend the drones to the Mediterranean. So this is something, I'll be writing more about this in the coming days here, Mario. This is not, we keep thinking, I think, about in the rear view mirror. We keep thinking, oh, we're going to roll back time. Time's not rolling back here. Time is going to move forward because what has been demonstrated cannot be undemonstrated. And what has been before, maybe there was a whiteboard idea. You could use drones to control this space, and the big power of the United States maybe have trouble with it. What's occurring now is a reality has been demonstrated, like the opposite reality was demonstrated in the 1991 Gulf War. When before the 1991 Gulf War, we had the America, we're building new technology, and what happens is thud. The 91 Gulf War demonstrated the undeniable military supremacy and escalation dominance of the new precision military of the United States. Had not been demonstrated before. Everybody moved as a result of that. That's why all those Europeans cut their defense budgets. So we yell at them now, but this all made sense because you could rely on, and why do all those states in the Gulf want to get in tight with the United States? It's because America's there as the ultimate guarantor of their security. Well, this war is reverse the lesson of the 91 Gulf War like another thud. And that thud isn't going to be undone by any piece of paper. And what you're seeing is the realities underneath the diplomacy are actually driving the train. It's not the diplomats, they play a role, but it's more of a role of a conduit. They're just reflecting the realities underneath the diplomacy, and Iran is actually so far not overreached. I hope. I'm not really. I'm not very much in favor of this world because this world is pretty bad for America, and I live in America. But But Iran right now, the biggest hope I have is that they're going to overreach and do something really stupid here. But so far they haven't. They've done it all in this.
Why would you hope that? Is that because if they overreach, wouldn't Trump retaliate? Wouldn't that be bad for the region if we're back to conflict?
Well, the problem is, I said, I'm an American, Mario. When America goes down, I go down with it. I'm not leaving.
Yeah, but so if they're overreaching,
I'm on the ship. I'm on the ship all the way to the end, Mario.
No, but so my worry
I don't like the fact where it's going.
Yeah, but I worry that I agree with you, everything you said. I just worry the other path could be worse, because if they overreach and Trump, for political purposes or whatever, or legacy purposes, gets dragged back into it, that ship could head down an even worse path.
No, I mean they overreach and they lose China and they lose Russia.
Okay.
So far, no, I'm not. I mean overreach. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen here. There's a very good chance, Mario, that Trump is going to come under enormous pressure to do more bombing. So people right now are saying, oh, no, Trump could never use any more force because he's got the midterms. There's two sides to MAGA here. This is too broad brush. And what we're seeing, just remember, it was only a week ago, not even a week ago, that Trump did 3 days of bombing. Okay, so the idea that he'll never, drop another bomb is way too far. And what might lead this to be a problem? What might lead this to be a problem is the image that he is now projecting of weakness. And this isn't, and as I think I said it on your show here, the biggest problem is going to be when the Republicans call him weak, which is what's happening now. The Democrats are never going to be in love with Trump, of course. Most independents moved away from Trump before the war, or at least were heading a bit away from him before the war. Now, the biggest problem that Trump faces is he's going to lose support of his Republicans. And that is weakness. I mean, in the image of weakness is going to be a big problem. And what you're seeing is pretty much Republicans across the board. It's not just the neocons. It's basically everybody that I can see. I'm on most of these shows. I'm on Newsman. I'm on a lot of the shows. As far as I can tell, except for unless you live in the White House, on Sunday night, there was a lot of initial support for Trump. That is almost all disappeared right now. And J.D. Vance's tour yesterday totally backfired because he's only persuaded the Republicans that this is weakness. And this is Trump's problem now. How does he kind of deal with this image now of Trump as the weakling?
Part of the MOUs for Israel to stop bombing, for a ceasefire in Lebanon, and for Israel as phase 2 after the MOU was signed, the MOU says something vague about it, for the US to present a plan with Israel for Israel to pull out of Lebanon, something along those lines, something not direct, like Israel has to pull out by this date, which is not a good thing. Do you think this is a red line for Iran, for Israel to pull out, not a ceasefire, to pull out? I'm in the positions that I don't think this is a red line because Iran cares about Hezbollah.
Well, again, I think that these ambiguities are going to work to Iran's advantage over 60 days. So I'm looking at this in a 60-day window, and the more I hear, so let me just take what you just said as a fact, which is that in this 60-day window, there's supposed to be a plan for Israel to withdraw, and then they're supposed to withdraw. Well, after 60 days, let's say that doesn't really come to be, in which case that's another reason for Iran to close the Strait of Hormuz. The bill of particulars that Iran can present to the world about why it's legitimately closing the Strait of Hormuz is, I think, already being laid like breadcrumbs by the foreign minister, and also I think by the MOU, at least by the leaks. I'm going to take what you said as a fact. And if that is a fact, that's another breadcrumb for the list of particulars to close Hormuz again in 60 days. And then have Iran in the driver's seat to again, their leverage will be higher because now we're out of the cushion. The oil inventory buffers will be gone, and they have. They will then be middle of August, and they can just simply say, "Okay, we did it. They didn't come through. We told them this over and over again. Now we're going to dig our heels in." And most of the region is going to not be mad at Iran. They're going to be mad at Israel and the United States. So Iran there's this game of I remember I told you about how passing the buck, Trump is passing the buck. Notice how Iran is also passing the political buck. Every time it gains power, who is to blame? It's either America or Israel. Notice Iran is always saying, "Oh, it's not us. We're just responding to these big bad dudes." Okay, and what you're seeing is Iran is playing this game of passing the buck. So I look at this, and I wouldn't, I used to say I give them like a B or a B plus. I'm starting to move them up from a B plus to an A minus. I don't think they're quite up there with the best realists yet, but they're moving up, and it's because even their negotiating skills are starting to show what a Bismarck might do, what a Kissinger might do. That's what you're seeing here, and they don't. When Kissinger's cutting a deal, this is not about softy stuff. This is about gaining power. That's why Kissinger had that. So he did deals in diplomacy, but it was about power, and that's what I'm seeing here. Now, maybe they'll blow it, but so far, by setting it up so it's all Israel's fault when they gain more power, oh my gosh, how much better does it get if you're Iran?
Yeah, they're playing the political game very well. Very, very well.
And notice they've even pulled back. I don't know if you noticed this on X, at least on my feed. You know how they were doing all those AI generated things to mock Trump? Well, they pulled back about 80 or 90%. They still have a few, I noticed. But what I noticed is that what's interesting is I think they seem to notice they hit the flat of the curve. So they kind of ran that as far as
law of diminishing returns.
I think they've kind of figured out that maybe they'll bring that one back later, because they suddenly have moved in another set of directions where now it's the public spokesman, that is the foreign ministry and so forth, that are doing a lot of the talking. And I'm noticing, well, my goodness, the fact that they turned off the other while they're doing, it's like they really, in governments, Mario, we constantly say the one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, I can't, it's surprising to me that they're able to be, that reasonably coordinated, because I thought we blew the bits out of their government. I thought we killed hundreds of their leaders. And so I'm not expecting them to be even that coordinated.
Okay, well, we'll wait for the MOU to come out, and then we can go through the clauses and see the political ramifications.
Obviously, we need to do that, Mario. But what I'm basing everything on is the statements that are coming out of Iran, plus the realities of the oil inventory drawdown that I think people are talking about this, but I don't think they're bringing the two together. They're not seeing how the oil inventory drawdown can be used in the negotiations to structure the deal. Why is it 60 days? The whole thing here, is this all just coincidence? Yeah.
I'll also advocate for people to go check out the article you did on Substack on this for a deeper dive. But it's always a pleasure to have you, Professor. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, and thank you for all you're doing, Mario. I mean, your interviews are just the absolute best. I mean, my goodness, you get everybody.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Professor. All right, guys, I'll be live again in 13 minutes with Brendan Weichert. Otherwise, I'll go through the comments after the Brandon Weichert interview to get your thoughts. What do you think of the MOU? Are you optimistic as well, or are you still pessimistic about what could happen next? More importantly, are you optimistic, pessimistic in the short term versus the long term? Because I'm optimistic short term, very pessimistic long term. Would love to get your thoughts. I'll see you guys in about 15 minutes.